What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to start the week off by looking over here at the altcoin market, which is having a move up to start the week. We even have Bitcoin back above $24,000, but a nice little move over here in the altcoin market. So we're going to take a peek at and kind of talk about the things that we talked about last week. As we could see this little green candle that's been poking up here on the altcoin market. Last week, we were talking about, hey, look, our candle closes from back here, back in 2021. This has really kind of been the support level going on for over a year, that we were still trying to fight our way through it. Today, to start out our new week, we could see, hey, we see the potential of a pop happening over here on the altcoin market. We're going to go through a lot of things here in the altcoin market and then tie this back into structures that we've seen before to see the potential of, is this actually the bottom that's coming up in here? Do these structures tend to still pull back, waddle, Wyckoff accumulation, and then eventually go, or do we break down, or do we just work our way all the way back up in a straight line? But we'll get to that later in the video. But the thing that's optimistic to see right now is to see that, hey, we could see the altcoin market starting to poke its way through right here, which was the resistance level we were discussing last week. It's a big deal. We were looking at like the top 4 coins in the market: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance Coin, and XRP, that none of them had gotten through. But we did find a handful of them that had already broken through. But it was like, you know what, man, still the big boys haven't gotten through yet. We do have our first that has, and that would be Binance Coin. Binance Coin was able to break through. So we have our number 3 altcoin, or number 3 cryptocurrency in the cryptocurrency market has broken through. We have XRP still working on it. And we have Ethereum getting awfully close, taking one step higher from where it was back there on July 28th. So we do have Binance officially through, and Ethereum like teasing if whether or not it has actually gotten through or not. One of the things on here we can see, though, is that Ethereum has gotten through its 100-day moving average over the weekend. On Friday, it had a big pop. Saturday, Sunday, here we are Monday. Moving up again, trying to get through the resistance levels that have dated back to over a year at this point. So looks like in the next day or two, we'll have a more convincing answer on Ethereum over here, but we've definitely got it over here on Binance Coin. And of course, as we talked about last week, everything tends to move together. So, you know, there's leaders, there's laggers, there's mid-pack, there's all that good stuff. You look for a few of them to do it, then you look for a few more of them to do it, and then that provides more optimism for the rest of the market to be able to follow along. Now, of course, my grander perspective of the market is that Bitcoin has actually found at least a local bottom here for now. I think a lot of people are looking for lower prices right now. I think the market needs to remove some of that negative biasness from the market and pull back some FOMO into the market first before there's even the potential for a move down to actually happen again, if there even is going to be one. We've studied super cycle theory on this channel for years at this point. It's the thing that I presented on why I thought Bitcoin was at its top. It's why I sold most of my Bitcoin, 65% of my Bitcoin up here between 45,000 and 58,000, was believing in like a super cycle theory, and that, you know, it didn't end up going as high as it should have for super cycle, but we can see from the depths of the fall that it's actually done and the structure of the ending fall that it's actually done in here is that we've pulled back down to the price levels that we should have already pulled back to for a bottom to already be in, and that final capitulative grinding ending has already occurred in here. So my bias is that the bottom is already in for Bitcoin. And so my bias when looking at the altcoin market is trying to figure out, are we working on a bigger move to the upside, or are we working on some type of consolidation in here that could take a little bit longer to work its way out? But what I'm not looking for is for new lows to come in and for us to crush through the 200-week moving average. So all the things I'm doing and the way I'm looking at the market, which I don't know if it's going to be right or not, but the way I'm looking at the market is that the bottom is already in due to us bouncing there in the 200-week moving average and Bitcoin's price behavior of pulling back to the prices where I expected prices to pull back in regards to super cycle fractal. Did not go as high as I expected, but the ending has behaved like an ending, pulling right back to where it should, right back on top of the all-time high. And so if we go through this entire list, which I won't go through the whole list in here, but we can see that several more are starting to break their way through these price levels right in here. And we're going to go talk about a structure from the past of I was talking about last week that hey, you know, I would start getting a whole lot more optimistic and a lot less worried if we could at least get through here. And then I would be more okay with us pausing out in here, and we could even stay in here for weeks, and that would still be optimistic and bullish if we at least get through and are able to pause out in here. So we'll talk about that structure here in just a second. And the case that's going to be presented by that is actually quite a bullish structure there for the altcoin market, in which the altcoin market would go on and set new all-time highs. But I think it's important that we also talk about a different structure as well to say, hey, maybe it's not, maybe it still is reversing, right? Maybe the prices still are going to head way back up in here, but there could be this potential that things actually really get stopped out in here, and then off into a deeper move, we end up going all over again. And so I'll show that to you as well, because I see that on some altcoins, and it's not to pick on them, like Solana right here. I don't have anything against Solana. I see that, Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX, they've put like $300 million into developing the Solana ecosystem, and they're super mega bulls on Solana. So I know that it comes with its own FUD. It's had its own network problems in there, and I'm not here to pick on Solana from a network perspective, or that it's not going to eventually over the long term go on some massive run. Maybe it will, but when I look at the structure that we have right in here, I do see the potential that it could actually get stopped out in here and then head back down. So we're going to talk about that structure as well. But as for right now, I think it's a really optimistic time in the market. And I really like seeing that the altcoin market has broken through right in here, just barely. Hopefully in the next day or two, we get more follow through from it as well. And we could scoot up a little bit higher just to say, hey, you know what? These candle closes are non-issues. Also, right now, as I'm recording this on Monday morning, we haven't had the daily candle close yet, right? And if we closed our daily candle close where it's at exactly right now, it would take out daily candle closes. But again, there's still the rest of the day in this. By the time this video gets released, there will probably still be anywhere between 8 and 10 hours remaining in the day. And we'll have to check in on it tomorrow to see how it ends up closing. But so far, so good. So for the bulls, right, going on to new all-time highs, structures of this, when we were looking for the top to come in for Bitcoin back in October, November, and December of last year, I kept pointing to this structure for Bitcoin and how I expected it to kind of like set a new high, pull back, and then go off and set another high, and boom, that was it. That would be the end for Bitcoin, which here we go. We'll peek over here at Bitcoin real quick. You can see that is what it ended up doing, right? It ended up setting this new high, pulling back, new high, and then that was the end. That's also what we were looking for over here on Bitcoin, one little new high with a pullback, and then that would be the end. But looking over here at the altcoin market, it's also exactly what we got over here, right? We ended up getting this new high coming in here and just really seeing how it just kind of creeped up there into the ending before the altcoin market ended up finishing, which is also exactly how this structure worked in here for Bitcoin back in 2017. One more final attempt to get it, and then that was it, lights out, and then long consolidation followed by capitulation, long consolidation followed by capitulation. So looking for some type of reversal to come in the altcoin market, well, we know that when these endings come for Bitcoin, or when these endings come in capitulation, you end up having the shorts closing at the end. People will think, hey, that's potentially the bottom in there. Then it goes on and it flushes one more time. And then that's really the capitulation where people just get shook out of the market. We were talking about that back in here, that this could potentially be the shorts closing moment, and that one more flush does end up coming here in the market. We did end up having that flush happen in here. Of course, it was met with a lot of scary stuff. It wasn't just price action, right? You had Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, Voyager Digital, BlockFi. You had every reason in the world to think this market is crashing and crumbling on itself while this moment happened, and while it went down and hit that 200-week moving average, including me. I'd never been through anything like that before. That was utterly terrifying for that moment to occur. But that we're now working our way back into the shorts closing moment in here. And if we're going to see this market go off and continue going for the altcoin market, what would we be looking for? Obviously, some working through happening in here, but then eventually another move up. And then the big deciding factor is whether or not we can get up even higher. And in this circumstance for Bitcoin, it was getting through all of the retracement levels. So that's going to be really the thing to look for if we continue working our way up in here, is can we at least get up here to these retracement levels to take out these price areas right in here, these top set back in here, because there's a wave count there that I'll show you in just a minute. You get through there, ABC consolidating here, and that consolidation, that could last 6 months in there for something equivalent like that for there in Bitcoin. But structurally, for what has happened here, now that I have all the slop drawn on this screen at this point, while they look slightly different, they are incredibly similar at this point. You have the parabolic rise, you have the parabolic rise, you have the big fall, the going on to attempt to set the new high, the attempt to set new high, while just creeping in there and creeping long consolidation, massive capitulation, massive capitulation. And I understand not a lot of people were here in 2017 when this one happened. I went through this one. I've shared my experiences of this one right in here. This scared the living daylights out of me when it happened back here in 2017. And it was very similar to what happened in here, just different from a narrative perspective, but the structure with the parabolic rise and the crash, and then the attempts to go on to set the highs, and then the capitulation down and the capitulation down. Very similar. So this is still looking really good in here. Also, we've looked at Ethereum from back in 2016. It went through an almost year-long process similar to what we've had happen in here, which Ethereum was parabolic, pulled back, goes on, tries to set this new high in here, pulls back, new high, then long consolidation, capitulation. Same things we have happening in here, long period consolidation, capitulation. And we can clearly see from liquidity standpoints, things were very different in here in regards to, what does it look like at the very end? It was not that grinding type of period, but more of excessive and then straight back down. And this parabolic rise was not as fluid as the one we had in here. So kind of have to take it for a grain of salt of saying it's got to be a mirror split image, copy and paste fractal that's happening in here, but conceptually still the same thing, right? A big rise with an attempt to break into the high, but failing with long consolidation and capitulation. And that even these endings are slightly different in here. But getting back into these price levels in here is like getting back in here. And we could see that if there would be one more excessive move to the upside to get back up in here, and to get back up in here, it could come relatively quickly. As we talked about last week, there's essentially nothing in here. Every time we've gone through this area, it's really just been like flying through it, where there's really been no resistance each time we go through. It's just been quick with no real resistance levels happening in between here. And that we just kind of go from one to the next each time we go through in here. And that getting through this area here on the Altcoin Market Cap gives us kind of that ticket to be able to shift our way back up. And the thing about markets is to try to kind of think about what that would be like ahead of time. That's what I do, right? I look at the structure and I say, all right, for Bitcoin, it got up pretty quick. For Ethereum, it got up pretty quick. If the market got up here really quick, go ahead and imagine what the market would be like at this point. You have a ridiculous amount of people who have sold out down in here, and they're waiting for new lows to get set in. And if prices got back up in here, what would happen? You'd have all the people who stayed in the market hooting and hollering, and then you'd have all the people who sat on the sidelines saying, wait a minute, this did not play out the way I expected it to. Would that be the price level where they all buy back into the market? And then what happens? Long consolidation afterwards. And just like we showed over there, Bitcoin, long consolidation afterwards too. But either way, even though these structures do look slightly different over here on Bitcoin and Ethereum, Ethereum didn't have as much liquidity back then as Bitcoin did. Structurally, I see the same thing. I see different endings in here. If you wanted to kind of draw them a little bit differently and you said, hey, look, this is super excessive and then bounce right back up. What do you have? You have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then now we're working back up into these price levels right back in here to try to break out for one final break. And like alternatively, we look at that structure from Bitcoin right here. We can go to the market cap, and I've got us on like 30-minute candles, so we can look at this a lot more microscopically to say, hey, look, when this was coming down and we were looking at this back when Ethereum was back here, and we were looking for like what V bottom reversals look like coming out of here, being like, hey, this thing could just go straight back up, right? Well, the thing we were looking at over here on Bitcoin from that time period was right back in here and saying that once we had this kind of capitulative action happen in here, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have this area that you really work out. And then finally, you have that capitulation right there at the end. And that for Ethereum, we had just that thing going on right in here where we had the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 working out the area. Then finally, the capitulation that comes on in here. And even for Ethereum, whereas it worked its way back up into, it's back in here trying to work through these areas as Bitcoin was back in here, right? So if we say, where is Ethereum right now? It's right in here, right? So Ethereum's in here, get a workout a little bit higher, and you buy yourself a ticket to going even higher. Like not just a little, but quite a bit. And so if we were to buy ourselves a ticket up to here, getting above as Bitcoin did in here, what do we have? Very similar action happening in here, right? And that maybe this was the big reversal coming in here. And notice how it does have to consolidate in here for a little while, but it doesn't get rejected by the bottoms down in here. So I know a lot to think about, a lot of theorizing, but the reality of Ethereum structure in here is that it's the same style thing, right? It is the parabolic rise, big fall, excess with the grind, consolidation, capitulation. And then if you work your way back up in here, up into these areas right here, taking out these tops, boom, you're good to go. And with my bias in believing that the bottom is already in for this market and looking at the structures that we've been following for a long time on here, I believe there's a good case for that. This is what's coming next right in here. And that if you imagine the market right now, what would be the biggest pain trade for the market right now to where it wouldn't know what to do is that if it did have a move like that for Ethereum, if it did go in a straight line up, and if the altcoin market had a straight line up cutting through all of these gap zones in here right there, what would market participants do here? It would add the biggest level of confusion to the market at that time. You'd have a bunch of people who held through all of that pain who are thinking, man, is this a time for me to start selling some of it out because I just went through a really rough ride and we're back in retracements? And then there's also going to be another group of people who sold out at the lows and the whole market just moved all the way back up. And they say, what do I do? Do I get back in the market? And that in these circumstances of what we see in each of these structures, the next move in there is like 6 months of sideways. So 6 months of grinding back and forth to where you still don't know the answer. Is the market going to consolidate in here and then break out and go off into new all-time highs? Or like we talked about with Bitcoin last week, in each one of these structures, that eventually Bitcoin does do some type of retracement bounce before it breaks over and rolls over even lower. And then you're going to have a bunch of people hooting and hollering and screaming that this move up right in here is nothing more than the bounce out in here. And then we've got to move our way back down. And I think that would add massive amounts of confusion to the market to get a bounce up in here. But structurally, it even looks like we are going to get that bounce up in there and that the market won't know which direction to go in from there. And that's why I love markets. That's not me being mean to anybody. It would confuse both sides. The bulls and the bears wouldn't know what to do here. The bears would be FOMOing back into the market. The bulls would be taking profits on the market, you would think. And then both of them would be battling out on saying, which way is this market going? If everybody's in agreement that we're going to go up, then the two likely things would be either a super long period of sideways action or a rollover at that time. But as we saw in both structures for Ethereum and for Bitcoin, when we did this exact same thing, it actually led on to new all-time highs. So I think that it's far more likely, in my opinion, in my views of the charts and the structures that have happened here, is that Ethereum and the altcoin market are mimicking behaviors of what happens before they go on and they do set new all-time highs once again. And that all of this action that we've seen here in the altcoin market has been a backtest of the previous all-time high, and that this is common. I don't really share those exact same beliefs for Bitcoin over here, and it's not because I'm anti-Bitcoin or I think Bitcoin is slow or anything like that. I get it. Bitcoin is the gold standard of crypto currently, but Bitcoin did go on and hit a 4.236 extension in here. And so for that leaves me on the question of whether or not Bitcoin is going to go on and set another new all-time high, or if Bitcoin is going to work its way back into a retracement before rolling over again. Either way, I don't know. That's not even important for this video right now. I think the thing that's interesting is what's happening over there in the altcoin market and the move that we actually saw happen here this morning and throughout the weekend. And that now we have cut through the 100-day moving average. We're cutting through these areas that were of concern. And structurally, this looks optimistic for another leg up higher. And I'll take a bunch of this off the screen really quick. But the whole point of really doing this is that obviously you can hear I'm a little excited in my voice. I think, this is my base case. This is based off all the studying of the charts that I've done, the move that we're seeing happening in here, that we're starting to step a little bit higher. It's getting me optimistic that in these types of structures, what eventually happens is a pretty big move. I can't guarantee that's what's going to happen, but if it does, we keep seeing it over and over again that they happen very fast. And if it happens very fast, we've already kind of talked about it ahead of time, that if it occurs over the course of just like a couple of days, which tends to seem to happen in those circumstances, it's going to immediately be like, all right, guys, we got it. We're getting back into retracement levels. Now it's time to start kind of worrying. Whereas if you think about the rest of the market, we're talking about sentiment and thinking about it, how many bears there are still in the market, how many people are still doubting it in the market. That's what you want to see. You want to see doubt in the market, but that a lot of that doubt will disappear and we'll start seeing everybody really bullish at the same time, right? And then when everybody gets really bullish at the same time, it makes all the other people who are really bearish doubt whether or not their bearishness is right, because the people that they were following that were bearish are suddenly bullish. And now nobody knows what to do anymore. Everybody's like, hey, bull, bull, bull. And then at this point, it's going to be like, okay, well, wait, now it's time to actually kind of worry, because we don't know. We have different situations here which this thing can roll over. But I'm bullish. I'm sitting here saying, I think that's the low, man. We pinpoint nailed that 200-week moving average. Bitcoin pinpoint nailed its previous all-time high with a completed fractal for what an ending looks like. I'm bullish. I think we're moving up in here, and I think if it happens, it could actually happen really fast. But the rest of the market, all the doubters, will start to flip at that point. And at that point, that's where it's kind of like, well, wait, nope, now we got what we were looking for. We sat there. I was annoying all of you to death saying, hey, look, we're on the 200-week moving average. It's looking great. Then finally we get up here, and then I'm like, okay, well, wait, now it's the time to be like kind of worried. We just moved up a whopping 150% in the altcoin market. Now it's time to worry. But what you'll see that Twitter, YouTube, a lot of the bears out there will flip to being bullish suddenly. And then everybody will kind of be, what do we do? But at this moment right here is where I'll start being, all right, now we got to start talking about this stuff again. Is this thing going to roll over here, or is this thing going to consolidate here for a long time? Because going back to like Solana, right, what we were talking about just at the very beginning of the video is that if you do have something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, it's very common if this whole thing was a big, massive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bull run, that this would be your A wave, followed by your B wave, followed by your C wave. And so that on Solana, for example, you could roll right back up to wave 4 to complete a B wave, and then head on down for 5 waves to complete your C wave. And that Solana still could be setting itself up for a wonderful bull run a long time from right now. But the volatility along the way, this whole run up in here, this could be a massive 400% rise that comes over here in Solana. But then afterwards, it's followed by another 88% fall afterwards. And so that's going to be the complications that we'll be dealing with at that time. If the prices do rise up into there, is, what comes next after we get back up in here? Most people are looking for this to come right now. But if it doesn't, and if the prices shoot straight up in here, we'll see a complete swing in the market in sentiment wise. But we could see the dangers that would exist there, an example for something like Solana. And this would be prevalent throughout the rest of the market. And maybe we'll see something similar to what we saw during the last run with the altcoins, where it's not everything, right? We saw a lot of stuff not go. We saw a lot of stuff did go. And to think that we can't have these type of volatile runs the whole way, we definitely can. For those who were not here in 2018, like for example, with Dogecoin, right? We saw big falls. You saw 86% fall. Afterwards, what would you see? You would see a 150% rise. Then afterwards, what would you see? You would see a 70% fall. Then afterwards, what would you see? You would see a 250% rise. Then afterwards, what would you see? You'd see a 75% fall. And even from right here, just this moment right in here, how deep did it really end up eventually going? Another 84%. So in these moments, these can be very volatile. And the question is whether or not if we're going to be in a moment, something like that for Solana or for a lot of the other altcoins that have had these big, massive runs and pull downs, and where are they at within these things? So that will be the big question at that time if we get that big move up. But I'm bullish, man. That's where I'm at right now. I don't even know if this video really had very clear direction, but I'm excited to see that the altcoin market is starting to poke up. We'll see how the day ends. We got to get more confirmation. It's not there yet, but it's a good sign so far to at least see Binance Coin, one of the top 4, starting to work its way up. Now we just need a couple more to start following along. But last week it was like, hey, there's a handful of them here and there. Now it's more than a handful. Now it's like dozens are doing it. And then now Binance Coin, one of the top 4, is doing it as well. So that's great. And then, of course, Ethereum is attempting to at the same time. So we'll check in on it again tomorrow. This is kind of my grand thesis right now, at least with where we're at right now. If something were to happen where if the altcoin market turned over on itself and it went down like this and we started like losing this stuff again, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe prematurely got excited there. But any step up higher into these areas right here, more than welcome to just bounce around. And then waiting for what we saw happen in Ethereum Classic, waiting for what we saw happen in both Ethereum and in Bitcoin from back in the day. One more big push up, and then probably a period of consolidation. So All right, I'll wrap this thing up. I feel like I got into a lot of rambling there for a Monday. I don't know. I think what I was trying to do today is to make sure that my video would be a lot shorter than the videos I did last week. Pushing 35, 40 minutes on a video and then editing it, that's a lot to do in a day. That's like 2 hours of recording and then 2 hours of editing and then 2 to 3 hours of exporting, uploading, and processing at YouTube. And it takes up a big chunk of the day and exhaustion on that. I was just trying to keep this one shorter. But yeah, who knows? It just went off into a ramble. It's a Monday, man, getting back into the swing of things. But I'd like to see what happened over there in the altcoin market. It's an exciting start to the week. We'll see how we finish today off, and we'll check in again on it tomorrow. We see that the stock market is also up today with the Dow Jones poking through the 100-day moving average as well, doing a similar structure too. So fingers crossed, looking good. Otherwise, I'll wrap this thing up, guys. I'm excited for the altcoin market, looking for more of a move and a bigger move eventually to come. So fingers crossed. All right, that'll be it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.